I am thrilled to be able to present Delores Whelan. Delores, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Maureen. Okay, thank you so much, Maureen. I'm delighted to be, okay, what do I need to do? View, gallery view. Okay, I'm delighted to be able to speak to you at IBAM. It was actually 9 years ago that myself and Cynthia Métis presented the beautiful Celtic calendar, which she did all the artwork for and I did the other aspects of it. And it was really special to be there. And I was just thinking about IBAM and about Cynthia. And the next day I got an email from Monica saying, you know, that they were going to be doing it online. And I just thought that was quite synchronistic. And I find that in these times that we're living in, when we tune in, there can be an amazing connection across the world for people who are thinking and speaking the same language and I suppose living within the same vibration. My work, as some of you will know, has been in recovering the wisdom of the Celtic spiritual tradition for us modern humans, people who live in the 21st century. One of the things we have to realize, we can't go back and live in another era from our own, but what we can do and what we must do is we must gather the wisdom that our ancestors, and I'm not talking about our recent ancestors, I'm talking about ancestors back as far as 5,000 and 6,000 years, who lived in Ireland, who had an amazing spiritual tradition, who were totally connected with the divine in both the form of immanence, where it was to be seen everywhere in the natural world, and in the transcendent aspect of the divine, which is the great mystery. The people who lived in Ireland, the Celts were one of the more recent visitors to our shores. Before that, we had many other civilizations going right back to the time of Newgrange, 5,000 years ago, and that were the megalithic people, and we had the Neolithic people, the Bronze Age people. And what happened, it seems, is that every time a new colonization happened, or we might say an intermingling happened, some of what was there before was integrated into what was new and coming in. And then when that happened, everything was evolving very slightly. When the Celts came, they also understood that Ireland was, even especially then, a deeply spiritual place. And one of the things that's very interesting to me is that the number of people who want to come to Ireland to walk the land of Ireland. And the reason they want to do that is not because of the weather, not because of anything other than that they experience the sense of presence of the divine in the land. Ireland's land has always been considered sacred. And even though we've had many wars and many different colonizations and many troubles, something has remained steadfast. And that something is our connection, deep connection within the land to the sacred. And that is becoming more and more, it has been awakened more and more at the moment, and has been for the last about 30 years. I often tell the story. In 1988, I was invited with a small group of people to accompany a woman called Diani Wahoo, who was from Vermont. She was a wisdom keeper of her tradition and a Buddhist scholar. And we went around different sacred places, and her presence and my meeting her presence had a huge effect of awakening me to the actual spirituality of the land in Ireland. And it was a very important moment for me to awaken to that spirituality in the land. And since then, in 1988, I have been tramping around the sacred places, going with groups, going on my own. And what's really encouraging for me to see after those 30 years, that whole awareness is waking up hugely. And many young people are waking up to this beauty and the profound spirituality of our land. And that is extremely important, because we live in a society that doesn't understand that land and the earth is sacred. And I think at the heart of the Celtic spiritual tradition was an understanding that God and the divine was present in every single atom of the living planet. God is, or the divine is also present in the mystery. What was so important for the peoples of this country over many, many generations and centuries was the actual capacity to connect with the divine and to see the divine within the natural world. And many of our writers, many of our poets would have referred to that. And you know, that divine connection was very near the surface, where in many other countries it may not be anything nearly as accessible. One of the things also is that when we walk in the natural world, we have to divest ourselves of many, many of our modern day attachments. So if you go for a walk in the forest with your phone plugged into your ears, you should stay at home, because you're not going to be able to experience the forest. You must actually let go of the busyness in your mind. And one of the ways that we can do that is by walking mindfully within the natural world. And when we do, I've learned this myself hugely over the last 25 years, particularly, that when I walk with awareness in the forest or on the roads, up the lanes, wherever it is, what I engage with engages with me. This is something very, very beautiful. And that's what I observe. I am being observed by what I'm observing. This is it's a very much what would you say? It's a very much a communion between myself and whatever I am experiencing. And in that way, the world is breaking in on me, and I am being transformed by it. One of the things that you mentioned, Maureen, in our brief beforehand was, you know, how can the being in the natural world help us to become calm and to relax? One of the things that I find when I go in the natural world is that it helps me to sense my connection with the greater planet Earth and with the universe. We humans in the 21st century tend to think of ourselves as very individual and as people who are, you know, in our own little bubble, as it were. But we don't really get that we're totally connected to every single thing. There was a great Celtic scholar called John Scotus Erigena, and he was in the 9th, 10th century. And he said, you cannot describe a human being apart from their environment, because a human being has no existence outside of its environment. So when I talk about me, I'm me who lives in this place, and I'm part of this landscape. I'm part of where I live. It informs me and I inform it. There's a beautiful poem which I'd like to share with you, which was written actually by an American poet called David Wagner, yeah, I think is his name. And it is a beautiful poem called Standstill. And this is what we must learn to do in order to be able to connect with the sacred in the world. We must learn to stand still. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as you would a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen, it answers. I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come home back here again, staying here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two bushes are the same to wren. If what a tree or a branch does is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. Now, that's very much part of the Native American tradition, and that poem was written in response to a story that was told to younger people in the Native traditions to help them to understand their place in the world. And I think that we in Ireland did have that. I wouldn't say we have it anything like what we had 50 years ago or 100 years ago, but things are always changing. And as I said, I'm becoming aware of a big shift. And actually the pandemic has really supported that. the pandemic, because people have had so much time and they've been out walking and they're not rushing around, and they're walking with awareness, and beginning to feel the energy of the earth and all that's surrounding them, the bird song, the trees, the leaves, the rivers. I was out walking today, the river is flowing because we've had so much rain, and all of this, and noticing how everything is constantly changing, and yet within that changing there is a dynamic equilibrium and stability. It's not randomly changing, it's changing in response to what's happening. The peoples who lived in this country, like many of the native peoples, were a primal people. And what I mean by that is they were people who lived very closely in relationship with the land. And even though they evolved from that reality, they still held within their psyche and their souls an understanding of the unbroken wholeness of the universe, and that is the actual true basis of reality. That is a really important thing for us to begin to own again, that we are part of a hugely unique and whole universe. We are not separate anything. And even, the whole idea that many of us would have grown up with, that somehow God is away up in the sky and we are down here. Well, it's Meister Eckhart, the great Christian mystic from the 14th century in Germany, he says, between us and God, there is no between, unless the between we put there. And we put all these theories and we put all this stuff. But in reality, we can find that connection with the divine when we still ourselves. And to still ourselves, we have to become present. And to become present, we have to still ourselves. And so when you go walking in nature, one of the things that you can do, which is very helpful, is to set the intention, maybe, that you will be aware of as much as you can be with each step. How can I become present to everything that I'm here seeing? And how can I become present to everything that is looking at me as I am looking at it? It's very interesting to realize we are looking at the world and the world is looking at us. One of the things that's very, very helpful is that, and I do this all the time, is when I'm feeling stressed or when I'm trying to get clear about doing something, I go for a walk. Somebody once said, always trust the thoughts you get when you're walking, because they're usually very important. So as I walk, I sometimes will make a prayer, may I be well, may I be safe. May I be free from fear, may I be free from anxiety, free from anger, resentment, bitterness, and regret. May I be deeply at peace. And one of the things that we talk about a lot in the Celtic tradition is that whole idea of peace. The peace of the living earth, the peace of the shining stars, the peace of the waves, the peace of the rivers. These are all things which can bless us and can bring us into a place of peace. Being present is the most important thing, the aspect of our time in nature. So as I said at the beginning, if you want to allow the natural world to become a spiritual teacher, which is what it is, then you must go in there without your headphones, without your radio or your whatever it is you're listening to, and allow yourself to open up to that place of magic and of medicine. The natural world is full of medicine for our soul, and that medicine comes in the way of tranquility or of being able to observe the wonderful diversity of the natural world and to see within that how everything fits together. And there's a harmony there that when we watch it and observe it, somehow that harmony infuses our spirit as well. And in doing so, we can then return to our next job or whatever it is we have to do with a deeper sense of peace. And when we do that, we can become agents of transformation and agents of peacefulness within our world. And as we know, there's an amazing lack of peace in the world, an amazing lack of peace. One of the things that's really important in the Celtic tradition is are the prayers that were used. And these prayers are very, very ancient. And many of the prayers invoke blessings from the elements because they believed that the elements had the power to bless. And I'd love to read you the Deer's Prayer, which is one of the most famous of the sorry, the most, sorry. There's a chapter in a book which says recovering the God intoxicated Celt. And that God intoxicating Celt was a person who was able to see the divinity everywhere where it was in the world. But the presence of divinity was always represented through this worldly presence. I'm going to read this prayer for you now, and I can find it. One of the most important things is the I am presence. And the I am presence is that still point within a person where they are in contact with the divinity within them and within the world. And this poem is ascribed to one of the first Celts who's supposed to have come to Ireland, the poet Amergine. And he speaks about the I am presence. I am wind on sea. I am ocean wave. I am roar of sea. I am bull of seven flights. I am vulture on cliff. I am dewdrop. I am the fairest of flowers. I am the boar for boldness. I am the salmon in the pool. I am the lake on the plain. I am the word of skill. I am the point of a weapon that poureth forth combat. I am God who fashioned fire for a head, who smooths the ruggedness of a mountain. Who is he who announces the ages of the moon, and who the place where there falleth the sunset? And it goes on to talk about how everything is a reflection of the divine. When I was asked to do this, I was asked to say what kind of practices would help us to find peace within nature to support us in our lives. Well, I've mentioned a few of them, but the most important one, I think, is the capacity for silence and to walk in silence and to allow yourself to become engaged with the natural world and to allow the majesty and the magic of the world to actually break in on your consciousness and in a way to open your heart, and in doing so to allow you to connect with that majesty and that magical aspect of the divinity as present in the natural world. When we do that, we have a great sense of being part. We have a sense of belonging, because one of the great tragedies of 21st century human beings is that so many people feel a sense of disconnection. Many people, especially in your country of America, that is not the land of their ancestors. They don't have that sense of connection with the land, maybe that some people who've lived on the same patch of land for a long time have. There's a kind of a sense of maybe alienation. And when we live in huge cities and large cities, it's very difficult to, it's very, very difficult to feel that sense of connection. But we can always go out in nature. We can always stand still. The trees ahead of you and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here. And you must learn to know it as you would a powerful stranger. We're always so busy going somewhere, coming from somewhere. But the point of presence and the point of power is always in the present moment. And that present moment is only here for us in this moment. So we have to cherish the moment. And so often I find myself when I'm walking and I think I'm being very present, and then I realize I'm making lists in my head. And that's okay. I just say, okay, that's not what I'm here to do. But also to just go and sit in a place in nature and just allow yourself to sink into that place. It might be, I often sit with my back against a tree, or I might sit beside a river or wherever, and just allow yourself to be totally absorbed in that place and in that moment. And that brings a tremendous stillness. That brings this tremendous stillness. And in doing so, we can come back into our daily lives a little bit calmer and a little bit more focused.